This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
I'm about to go into some really deep topics on exposing the true nature of this realm and what astrology really is. And the information that I'm about to share is going to be very controversial, particularly for astrologers. And I just want to affirm at the very beginning of this video that although I am an astrologer, I'm not your typical astrologer. I'm probably not like 99.9% of the astrologers that are in this profession today. I don't see it in the same way that it is pushed on those entertainment platforms. And if you stick around to the end of this video, you're going to start to understand why I practice the type of astrology that I do and why I see things the way that I do. It is simply because I have looked deeper than surface level information. This wasn't taught to me by an astrology teacher, or from watching TikTok videos or, that type of stuff, or reading the weekly horoscopes in the newspaper. No, not at all. So just to begin, I'm going to explain briefly a little bit about astrology and the history of it. So astrology is usually defined as an ancient science of the living sky and its influence over natural cycles on Earth, nature, and the destiny of humans. Officially, it is said to be around 7,000 years old and originated in ancient Mesopotamia around 5,500 BC, following the illumination of Hermes. However, there is evidence that this science of the stars was in fact practiced much earlier. According to the Vedas, which gave foundation to Vedic astrology, it was deemed to be 10,000 to 12,000 years old. Also, every ancient culture shows signs of reverence to astrology. Old artifacts and cave art leaves clues suggesting that stargazing was practiced much earlier than what the official narrative suggests, even before Veda's time. So, why was astrology so important to our ancestors? Astrology is a science of algorithms which decodes the incarnation blueprint for this life. This involves our life purpose, calling, talents, resources, trauma, lessons, reason for certain experiences in life, timing of events, relationship aspects, career, health, and so much more. The astrology that majority of people follow and know of today is a marketing gimmick. It only tracks back to the 20th century when a man named Alan Leo decided to popularize astrology for advertisement and entertainment purposes. So when you see those little sections in newspapers talking about what your love life is going to be like this week and just horoscopes for your zodiac sign, and when you find a mug that's got your zodiac sign on the mug, this is not real astrology. This is not the original ancient type of astrology. It's very new age. And this is actually the kind of astrology that has people, not only astrologers, but also people of the public, seeing astrology as something good, as something, um, you know, light and fluffy and just entertaining, basically. Or not just entertaining, but as a good thing. So this is where I divert from the path. It's almost from the very beginning of the topic, astrology. So this exactly is something that I don't even associate with. I do not associate with this kind of astrology, and I like to make that clear because as we're about to get into, you'll realize why you don't actually want these kinds of attachments to astrology. Astrology is like a tool to decode the matrix code, the mechanism that is functioning, and it is very important to know of and be aware of, but it is not something to be worshipped in the way that it is today. So it's exactly this entertainment level of astrology that has people looking no further. And this is exactly what the controllers want. They want to put out misleading astrology, such as the tropical astrology system, and also a form of astrology that is so dumb that majority of people just read it for fun, but they don't really think there's anything to it. And they don't care to research or question it or take it seriously. When astrology is one of the most fundamental parts of figuring out what this realm really is, what we're really doing here, and what is honestly going on. So that is why they put out these kinds of Hollywood movies such as Don't Look Up, and it's telling us in our face that the truth and answer to a lot of our questions as truth seekers is actually in the stars above. So those very, very few people that are able to look past all of the roadblocks in astrology is the best way that I can call them, such as I said, tropical astrology, which is using a false, outdated system that when you follow this in general, it's just like jibber jabber on a piece of paper. The result and the data that you are developing doesn't mean anything because it does not relate to the sky at all. So they've given us that, and that managed to trick majority of the population with Western astrology. Then there are a few people that seek Vedic astrology, which is the sidereal astrology. But the only problem with this is that it's not using the exact sizes or degrees of the constellations. So that still does trip people up on when they're looking for accuracy. And then there are very few of us who discover true sidereal astrology. Some of us, or a lot of us who do go down that route, decide to add in a 13th sign of Fucus. I did a video on why there isn't actually a 13th zodiac sign, which I really recommend that you watch. And I will also bring up a few points that will reiterate why I say this and why I'm saying there is no 13th sign. So this is a little another little trick that does trip up some people when they go down this path. But one of the biggest ones is the advertisement to promote astrology as something great, something beneficial, something that is, I guess, God's beautiful creation. And this is why when I say that this video is going to be very controversial to and hard for a lot of astrologers to watch or to hear, is because I am saying that astrology is not what we have been told to believe, not what we have been taught, and we need to start looking at it for what it really is. So this is where I'm going to start getting into all the details that is going to show you the truth about the Earth matrix that we're living in and how astrology relates to this. So this is a video that I made a little while back, and I'm just going to play it for you now.
It's a clock. It's a clock. Oh my God, it's a clock. Virus, you're a genius. You're a genius. This entire arena seems to be laid out like a clock.
As you can see, I'm obviously showing a geocentric model, which is very, very important when we're going to be discussing the truth of astrology. I'm not implying that the Earth is flat. I'm going to make a different video about this later on, but absolutely the heliocentric model is a complete hoax, and that is not our reality. The geocentric model is the accurate version of our reality. And what I can say is that, from the way that we stand and we look upwards towards the sky, we are on a stationary plane. So that's enough that's required for me to do this video and explanation, but from what you could have seen from the video, I'm showing you how there is, in fact, intelligent design behind astrology. The stars are like a part of nature. So they were created just like a tree, the ocean, the ground was created as well. And they are, of course, situated above the firmament, within the waters above, and they are, I guess, energetic orbs of light. These are the stars and also the planets. And as you can see, the actual layout of this plane that we are living on is directly underneath the zodiac in the sky. So here's a better depiction to show you what all three of these symbols that I've put on the slide have in common. They're all circle. They're all the same shape. So if we're looking at our plane and then the zodiac wheel and then a clock, they are all kind of the same thing, but different, and they can be overlaid. So the center point would be the North Pole or Polaris, because the North Pole is the magnetic center of the plane. And then directly above is the zodiac, which is the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, which is the 12 constellations that are in a perfect circle around the North Pole star, Polaris, which is directly above the North Pole on the plane. And then this relates to a clock because the sun and the moon represent the hour and minute hand of a clock, and they go around the North Pole above the plane, but below the firmament. So we're already seeing here that there is purpose behind these zodiac signs. There is more to these zodiac signs than the newspaper or that TikTok video is telling you when it's talking about, oh, you'll get this in your relationship next week. You can see here that it was intelligently designed, and there is definitely an as above, so below situation here, with the zodiac wheel being situated directly above the earthly plane. And as I already mentioned, we are living under a glass dome. So this is actually a Gnostic image, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later. This is just an example of a flat earth map. But as I said, I'm not implying that the earth is flat. I'm just using these maps because they are the best representation to be able to show you what I'm thinking in my mind. And then this is just a photo of the Polaris star. And if you can see, this black point here is the North Pole. Polaris is directly above the North Pole. So based off the video that I showed you, and also showing you the layout of the zodiac directly above the plane that we are living on, that will show you how our realm is beginning to look a lot like a mechanical universe. And this is actually something that a lot of philosophers from the past believe to be true about our reality. So a little bit about how astrology works. The ancient texts, such as the Hermetica, tell us openly that God designed a secret mechanism to control humans. And a quote from the Hermetica states, "I will build the zodiac, a secret mechanism in the stars, linked to unerring and inevitable fate. The lives of men from birth to final destruction shall be controlled by the hidden workings of this mechanism. Each person is born at a very particular, non-accidental moment. Our date of birth and the exact time are a mathematical representation of certain energetic codes that have been assigned to us at the subconscious level, which determines our future experiences, predispositions, and choices. Few can escape their fate or guard against the terrible influence of the zodiac, for the stars are instruments of destiny which bring all things to pass in the world of men." So astrology decodes all ways in which people are conditioned and controlled by the matrix mechanism, thus holding the key to our liberation, full potential, and becoming our true selves. So if you can understand from the quotes that I have just mentioned, these ancient texts depicted astrology as a controlling mechanism of this earth matrix, almost like a code. And I'm going to be using an example that I feel portrays how I see and picture astrology in the best way possible. And it may seem weird at first, but I think as this video goes on, you'll be able to understand it a little bit better. So this is you. Imagine that you, being a soul and a spirit, are represented by a fly. And this right here is a spider's web, obviously, but this represents the zodiac. So when we take the spider's web representing the zodiac, and as you can see, they are very, very similar in their appearance. And we take a fly representing your true self, your eternal self, your soul and your spirit. So what happens with a fly and a spider web? Basically, the spider makes a spider web to catch a fly. And when we're comparing this example to us, I see this as the spider representing the creator god of the realm that we're in, created the zodiac, which can be represented by a spider web, and us being the fly, which represents our soul and spirit, incarnates here. And upon incarnation, we are imprinted with a cosmic blueprint, which becomes our code and our program. Almost as if our soul gets scanned like a barcode and we are read, all of our past lives and all of our being is read, and we are then born at a very specific moment in time so that we can be imprinted with the exact natal chart, which is a snapshot of the sky when we're born. And then that will be our code and programming for this lifetime. So this example is implying what you are thinking. It's implying that the zodiac is not inherently good. It is definitely there, it's real, and it's absolutely functioning and affecting us. It's writing the script. It's the wheel that is spinning above us very slowly, but it is there. And it is truly the web. It's the net that traps souls when they incarnate here. Because when you see it this way, instead of seeing the zodiac as something positive and freeing, and you start to realize, wait a second, if you already have knowledge about the basics of this realm and your reality, so you have realized that we're not exactly in paradise when we're here, and we are in some kind of samsara cycle or reincarnation soul trap. And a lot of people do wonder about this and they question this, and they'll talk about the moon being Pac-Man, and our souls are the ghosts that Pac-Man eats, and all these different ideas, when they still skip past astrology and completely forget. And astrology is just a word to describe the study of the stars, but really it's the zodiac wheel, and then it's the planets and their relationship to each other on the zodiac. And they skip past this, realizing that we are actually being controlled by some kind of mechanism that was likely created by a malevolent force with evil intentions. So this leads me to talk about Gnosticism and the Gnostic teachings about astrology. And if you don't know much about what Gnosticism is a set of beliefs. This wasn't a religion, but it was a group of Christians that had a specific set of beliefs. And their beliefs centered around the idea that the material world is opposed to God and is therefore evil. So the Gnostics sought after gnosis. Their main goal was to achieve gnosis. This is essentially self-realization through knowing yourself and through attaining knowledge and wisdom. And they had their own kind of story of creation, just like the Bible has the story of Genesis. The Nag Hammadi scriptures wrote about their own story that is slightly similar, but it has to do with Sophia, which means wisdom in Greek, but Sophia was an aeon that descended from God, or the source, in Pleroma, which is the Gnostic version of heaven. And she essentially sinned against God when she created without her counterpart, and her counterpart was Christ. So because she was only half of her full self, she couldn't create to her full capability. So she accidentally created the demiurge. And the demiurge is an evil being who is essentially the Gnostics' version of Satan. And when she saw that he was evil, she essentially banished him to the abyss. And there, the demiurge, thinking that he was the only one to exist, developed a bit of a superiority complex about himself. So this is why we hear a lot about Satan or Samael being a selfish god. And so the demiurge decided to create a world of his own. And so he created Earth. And the Gnostics believed that the Old Testament God was the demiurge. So in the Bible, the God of the Old Testament was an evil God because they believed that was the demiurge who created Earth. And so from the demiurge, there were Archons, which we will discuss about soon. But these are essentially the quote unquote demons that were like the helpers of the demiurge. And together they created Earth, and they created the humans on Earth. But the humans needed souls to be animated. So essentially, the theory is that there was some kind of a tricking method that may have tricked souls in the beginning to incarnate into this realm, which is a little bit like the demiurge's playground. And then because the demiurge is, of course, selfish and evil, he doesn't want the souls to leave. So it becomes like a soul farm where our Lush is used to repower this Earth matrix and everything in it. So that's just a little bit of a description of the story of the Gnostics' belief. And how this ties into astrology is that, of course, the stars are a part of nature, so they were believed to have been created by the demiurge and the archons as well. So the cosmos was believed to be created by the demiurge as well. So essentially, the Gnostic belief is that a fallen god created a material realm opposed to the true, authentic God in Pleroma, and that the earthly matrix is in the abyss. It's essentially the playground of an evil god. And those of us here who are, in fact, from beyond this realm, because not everybody is, and this is where we get the theory of non-player characters, but those who are, in fact, from outside of this realm are imprisoned here because we are in physical material flesh suits. So the Gnostics always sought to leave this realm and never come back. That was essentially their goal. Despite them being Christians, they believed in the Christ being within. And instead of the idea where you should follow the biblical rules, essentially worship the material world and hopefully make it into heaven to avoid hell. So the Gnostics believed something quite different. Instead, their goal was to achieve gnosis and liberate from this soul prison. So that is just an explanation of the Gnostic belief system, in case you didn't know, just to help you have a bit more of an understanding when I go on to explain what the Gnostics believed about astrology. So in the Gnostic texts, astrology is considered as a negative controlling mechanism implemented by the demiurge, or the creator god. And the ultimate goal of a true Gnostic is to be freed from the wheel of fate and the stars by virtue of gnosis. In Gnosticism, the Archons are malevolent, sadistic beings who control the earth as well as many of the thoughts, feelings, and actions of humans. They assisted their master, the demiurge, with the creation of the world and continue to help him administer his oppressive rule. Astrology is a useful tool to help you know yourself and identify past karma, and the whole point of the Gnostic journey is to ascend past the dome of the heavens and rewrite the path your karma has brought to you and liberate free from your natal chart. It is said that humans were created by the Archons and hence were designed to be extremely susceptible to their influence and to be almost unable to resist it. Only the divine spark from the Pleroma, which had slipped into creation despite the Archon's intentions, gave people any kind of a chance of resisting the Archons' temptations. But only a few who are aware of that divine presence within themselves, and even for them, it was a tremendous ordeal to act in accordance with the presence rather than the wishes of the Archons. Most people are just the puppets of the Archons, living by their code and programs. So essentially what this is saying is that some of us have a divine spark, which is the Christ essence from the pleroma, which is essentially where we truly belong and come from. And it is those with this Christ essence that are more likely to be able to see the truth and see through the illusions within this matrix or quote unquote simulation construct that we are in. So it is these people that are more likely to take the narrow path. And it is the people without this divine spark who are considered to be the sheep that follow the herd and are incapable of thinking for themselves. They are essentially just the program. They are just the astrological program. Whereas those who have incarnated with a soul that belongs beyond this matrix, we are imprinted with the code, but it is not who we really are. So we actually have the ability to be able to liberate free from our natal charts when we choose to consciously take that path. Now, there are a lot of synchronicities when we start to look at numbers specifically. So firstly, the Archons and the planets. There are commonly said to be 7 Archons, which exactly corresponds to the 7 planets that have been identified in antiquity, whose movements were credited with producing astrological fate. Astrological fate is the main means through which the Archons control people's lives. After giving a list of the 7 Archons, the Secret Book of John adds, "This is the sevenfold nature of the week." The 7 Archons also correspond to the 7 days of the week, which could be expected since the days of the week were already named after pagan gods and the planets to which they correspond. So the ruling gods of each planet are actually pagan gods. Through this string of connections, the Archons also correspond to the 7 days of creation in the book of Genesis. The Gnostics interpreted the plural, us, in Genesis, "Let us make man in our image," as referring to the Archons. There's one further correspondence to note here. In ancient thinking, each planet occupied one of the 7 celestial spheres or layers of the sky. So each of the 7 Archons therefore rule over each of his own celestial sphere. And this provides the Archons with a further way to inhibit people's spiritual progress. And the ultimate goal of spiritual progress is not to empty your mind through meditation, but is in fact to attain true knowledge, not mental clutter that we learn about politics and sand dunes and things like that. But gnosis is true knowledge that has to do with discovering your true self and therefore finding the Christ essence and ultimately the authentic God that resides in the pleroma. If we're having to use language to label it for us to understand, but when we get to that level, there is no definitions. It is way beyond definitions. We can't even describe God. We can't even describe it, if that makes sense. But essentially, we are seeing here that the 7 planets are in fact the Archons. And there is no coincidence that there are 7 Archons, 7 planets, 7 days of the week, and 7 days of creation, as well as 7 celestial spheres in the sky, or 7 levels of heaven. This just shows you how interconnected everything is when you start researching esoteric mysteries. So here is a post that I made, which is showing you the 7 days of the week and the 7 planets. And I picked the French language to show you. And so you can see that they are undeniably similar in the way that they are spelt. So the 7 celestial spheres, according to Gnostic belief, when a Gnostic attempted to gain salvation, which they call gnosis, which is characterized as mystical insight rather than intellectual belief or moral action, his or her spirit ascended up through the celestial sphere towards the pleroma, which is the true heaven. The spirit of the Gnostic made this journey both during the Gnostic's life in moments of ecstatic enlightenment and after death to reach its final resting place. But as the spirit ascended to each sphere, the Archon who resided over that sphere would detain the spirit and ask it a series of questions. If the spirit didn't know how to answer those questions properly, for example, if its gnosis wasn't fully yet realized, then the Archon would be able to prevent it from ascending any higher. Therefore, it would be trapped by the Archons and still subject to their tyranny, implying that we are essentially living under the rule of 7 gatekeepers, which are there to prevent us from liberating out of this reality. And it was believed that the mature Gnostic was able to overcome all of the Archons and ascend all the way to the Pleroma, which made him or her superior to the very creators and rulers of this world. So as you can see, the Gnostic goal is not to come back again. It's not to worship this world. And even the character Jesus in the Bible says, a friend of this world is an enemy of God. Now think about that. So what about the 12 gates of heaven? Well, according to the book of Revelation in the Christian Bible, the 12 gates of heaven are the passageways through which some individuals may enter heaven and live with God after death. This, what I'm explaining here, is just mainstream knowledge. So the gates surround the holy city and are in groups of 3 outside the northern, southern, eastern, and western portions of heaven. The gates in Revelation 21 belong to the New Jerusalem, which comes down from the heaven to the new earth, shining with the glory of God. John describes the city as having a great high wall with 12 gates and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. In folklore and mythology, it is commonly believed that there exist 12 gates or entrances to the underworld. These gates are associated with the specific physical locations throughout the world that are located within areas of unusual geological or electromagnetic activity, or of mythical significance, and in which a number of unexplained and mysterious events, such as time warping and disappearances, have been reported. Pearly Gates is an informal name for the gateway to heaven, according to some Christian dominations. So I've got some images here to show you that the New Jerusalem is depicted as a cube. We've got the Mecca cube in Saudi Arabia here, and this is the CGI generated image from NASA, which shows a hexagon or a cube on the top. So now what I've written here decodes everything that I just said. So we enter this realm through one of the 12 gates. The 12 gates represent the 12 zodiac signs, and heaven in this context represents the astral planes in the orphic egg, which is also the Earth matrix. This is another reason why there are not 13 zodiac signs, because the 13th is a quote-unquote place beyond this zodiac mechanism. So when they say, oh, there's a hidden 13th zodiac sign, and the 12 zodiac signs are represented by the 12 gates in the Bible, you can see it as, yes, there is a 13th door that is hidden, and that is the door that is outside and above and completely out of the zodiac and completely out of the zodiac construct, which is the door. It's not a physical, literal door, but I'm just saying that it is a path, the narrow path that we should be taking, because that is the path that you would take as you are liberating free from the zodiac wheel. And there is a common misconception where a lot of people like to say that Satan is Saturn, but this is actually not true. So Saturn is actually the god of time, and the depictions of him eating his own children are symbolic of him harvesting souls. He carries a sickle because he is the grim reaper. So he's the god of structure, form, and time. He also represents the spiritual realm, whilst his polarity, Jupiter, aka the god Zeus, represents the material realm. In Roman mythology, Cronos became Saturn. Zeus was now Jupiter, and when he ascended the throne, Saturn fled to Rome and established the Golden Age. The Feast of Saturnalia was celebrated at the winter solstice every year in memory of the Golden Age. And this was a time when all executions were postponed, servants and masters ate at the same table. Christians eventually appropriated this festival and named it Christmas. So I'll talk about this in another video, but Saturn has always been known as the ruling god during the Golden Age. And this is essentially because Saturn is responsible for harvesting souls from the physical realm and from their physical body, which is what happens at death. When the Bible talks about the rapture event in the book of Revelation, well, the rapture actually happens every time we die. To rapture is essentially just for your soul to leave your body, and this is in mythology what Saturn is responsible for. And the Golden Age is an age of life where we are residing in a much higher and less dense reality. And hence, Saturn is the ruling god of this age because we are closer to the spiritual realm. At the moment, it fits just perfectly with Jupiter being the god of the material realm, currently in rule. So we are currently being ruled by Jupiter, which is why we are in an age of materialism and everything is very, very dense. And we look back on our ancestors to see what they knew, what they created, how they had all these abilities. And the reason that we don't have these abilities anymore is because our age at the moment has a very, very high percent of dormant DNA, being our quote unquote junk DNA. We only have 1.5% of our proteins coding for DNA, which is a very limited amount, meaning that our bodies and mind is only functioning at 1.5% of its potential during the age that we're currently living in. So no, Saturn is not Satan. They're completely unrelated. If anything, Jupiter is more likely to be the god that should be associated with Satan because Satan, or the demiurge, is a materialistic god and is a god of the material realm. So what does this all mean? I've gone quite deeply into what astrology actually looks like when we compare it to the geocentric model of our realm. And I also talked about how the Gnostics perceived astrology. So essentially, the zodiac is the net that has been constructed with this realm to catch souls and spirits upon incarnation and imprint them with a code that will be there to control them and their lives. And the goal of that is to prevent the soul from liberating from this realm. The purpose of your zodiac and your natal chart is not for some kind of positive, empowering, cool purpose. Actually, in fact, it is something that the ancients were very aware of, and they studied astrology for a very clear purpose, which was to learn and discover their code. So they were actually able to find ways to free themselves from it. It is essentially like a chain to this realm. The planets, being the 7 Archons, are there to write your script and write the script on the grand scale of what happens in this world. It's a mechanism that works like clockwork, and we are essentially living in a giant labyrinth that works like a game. And the creator god of this realm, also known by the Freemasons as the Great Architect, is not necessarily a benevolent god. Unfortunately, we fell from grace to be here, which is the hard truth that a lot of people don't like to admit. And while this realm goes through great year cycles ranging from the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and what we're currently living in being the Kali Yuga or the Iron Age. Either way, each time we are still within the orphic egg, which is the cosmic egg. There are many layers to this reality, and where we currently are, being in a physical vessel, is on the bottom one. So the true purpose of astrology is to learn your code. The main reason why I practice astrology and I do readings for people is so that they can learn their code, they can know their true self, they can discover their journey past, present, and future. And by this, you're using astrology as a tool so that you can actually liberate and free yourself from it. Because whilst you are still a fly caught in the spider's web of this earthly matrix, you aren't fully free. Because when you are living according to your destined script, it's only going to go the way that these archons have decided for it to go for you based off where you've been and how advanced your soul is. It's not random. Your specific natal chart and your script is very specific to who you are truly, your soul and your spirit, and where you've been and how advanced you are. So I do recommend checking out my website. I've got a lot more information on the readings that I offer and how I can help you with this. So that is going to be linked in the description. But other than that, thank you for watching, and be sure to share this with everyone that you think it would be helpful for.
Imagine having to wake up every day knowing you are living a lie, but having to somehow pretend and go along with it. Imagine playing this game of make-believe simply because you think and feel you have no other choice. You feel trapped and helpless. Nothing is really changing.
In fact, it's getting worse.
Through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Fear no evil. He comes to kill, steal and destroy, but I am quitting, I'm not backing down. Not giving up, he can't hold me back.